I'm Tanya Fox, and you're listening to Fox Talks Business Podcast. I started my career in the corporate world, but always played to my own tune and loved to think outside of the box. This didn't always serve me well with the bosses, so I made the decision to become an entrepreneur. And that little seed of entrepreneurial curiosity continued to grow as I branched out into retail, service, and franchise businesses. Now, I have been fortunate to have amazing successes in the last 2 decades, but they did not come without some really big failures and even bigger lessons learned. And that's why I started this podcast, not just to share the failures, but to show you how you can turn every failure into a success. We're going to hear from some amazing humans from around the world that are going to share their stories of the good, the bad, and the motivational entrepreneurial life has to offer. After all, life is too short to make all of the mistakes yourself, so why not learn from each other? And of course, we're going to have some fun, because as I always say, well, you know what? I'll tell you that at the end of the episode. So thank you so much for coming on the show today, Bob.
I am pumped to be here. Thank you for having me, Tanya.
And I mean, just off of a red-eye flight you were saying earlier, so this might be good. I might be able to get some extra stuff out of you.
Yeah, it could be. It's either going to be really bad or it's going to be really good.
I think it's going to be really good. So for those people that are out there, give us a little bit of your history, and then I want to dive into the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, my history is, ups and downs. I think like most entrepreneurial types, you probably heard some stories, and I know you've been around. I was listening to your show about how many over 1,000 days your show has been around. So I'm sure you've heard plenty of stories of backgrounds of entrepreneurial type of people and business people. So humble beginnings in New York, born in New York, but moved to South Florida when I was very young. Spent most of my adult life and most of my young life down there too, other than college in those first few years of my life. And I studied broadcasting in school. Went to college to be an athlete and study a little bit. Ended up falling in love with broadcasting and finished up a master's degree in broadcast journalism, working in sports radio for a couple of years, not even really, before I got recruited into the financial industry. And when I was in college, to take a quick step back, I had an amazingly unexpected experience. You know, you kind of go off to college and you think you're invincible, a young 18-year-old boy. And in a matter of a couple of weeks, I was diagnosed with cancer, and 9/11 happened all at the same time. It was just a tremendously trying time for me and my family. And so that kind of shaped my thoughts on the world and life. And so when I finally made it to my financial career, I think I had some time to reflect on really what happened to me when I was just a teenager. And so that kind of has led me in my professional career. And then you mentioned the book, and then that's kind of the most recent project of mine. My business partner and I left our firm that we worked for, me for 12 years, early last year. Wow, we are in 2022 already. Here's my first chance to mess that up. So last year, my business partner and I left our firm to start our own company. And with that freedom, I was allowed to publish a book because I no longer had to worry about broader compliance and regulatory concerns from the firm that I worked for. So yes, that's a kind of a quick fire at you history of Bob DePasquale right there.
Okay, so I want to go back a little bit because I want to know how you jumped from sports broadcasting to finance. Because usually, and I say that because I have a background in accounting, and it's not something that most people are like, that looks good. That looks fun.
No, most don't. So here's how it happened. I was really happy actually working in my radio career, and a recruiter came to the school that my wife teaches at. And he worked for an organization that I was very familiar with. They did some charitable work for me and people that I know, people around my church community. And I knew them very well, but I didn't really know what they did. I just thought they gave money away, which is cool. But he went into the office, and he said to the ladies in the office, "Hey, do y'all know anyone who would want to work in finance?" And they're all looking at him like, "No, this is like a preschool and a kindergarten. Why are you coming? Why are you asking us this?" And he's like, "Come on, you got to know somebody. Give me a name." So they're like, "Well, Mrs. DePasquale's husband's a really nice guy. Why don't you give him a call?" So he actually called my wife, and she was teaching at the time, so she couldn't answer. She came home that day and said, "Hey, honey, this guy left a message, and why don't you just give him a call back?" And I was like, "All right, sure, I'll be a nice guy." And I called him back. And to this day, I don't know why I said this, but I think it was just to get him off the phone. I said, well, I'll call you back in 6 months, just like quit talking to me. I don't want to be on the phone with you anymore. And I need to go. So I said that. And then 6 months had gone by and it was the holiday season. And that was really the only time that I really got time off. I mean, I was the grunt working at the radio station. So it wasn't like I could make my own schedule by any means at that point. So I actually had some time off. And, I said, my parents raised me to be a man of my word. I told this guy I would call him back. I don't know what made me think of it, but I called him back. And I think it was the most surprised he probably had been in his entire 40-year career of recruiting financial representatives. And I could just feel him fumbling on the other side of the phone, like, well, yeah, I remember you. Thanks for calling me back. He had no idea who I was. So I think he referenced his files at the time. And he ended up whining and dining me and my wife a little bit and showed me a little bit more about how their organization's mission was to help people's lives be better, more than just manage their money. And so he sold me on it. And I decided to leave the broadcasting career. And I had this thought in the back of my head that those skills would come in handy someday. And come to find out, they really didn't for 12 years, but now they finally are. So it's kind of a cool full circle.
All right. So let's talk about how they've come in handy right now.
Absolutely. So I love to talk about things that make people happy and things that make people's life better. And I found that money is just a tool for people. And the ones who have the most healthy relationship with money, regardless of the amount that you have, regardless of the amount of income you have, whether you inherited money, whether you earned it on your own, if you have a healthy relationship with it, it's very, very important. So part of my mission, especially over the past year, but even while I was working in the corporate world, was to share that. And I was able to do that using broadcasting skills. I mean, we would do 60 plus presentations a year. I'd speak to groups and try to help them with just some of the basic things. I wouldn't get into the finer details of how to manage money and taxes and inflation and economics, but it was very good to use those broadcasting skills to help communicate a really important message, in my opinion, to people. So I did that live for about 12 years. And more recently, I've been able to do it on podcasts just like this one, YouTube shows, virtual presentations, writing the book. Believe it or not, broadcasting and journalism and written journalism are very highly related. And so that's really been a helpful thing as well. So I've really been scratching that itch, flexing that muscle, if you will, over the past 12 months.
And I think that's an important thing that you said, and one that I want to reiterate to people, because so often, and I find that, this last year has been that a lot of people that are in finance are like, you got to make more money, make more money. That brings you happiness. And so it's very refreshing when someone, has the same sort of thought of I do, that you got to learn how to be happy where you are right now, because just throwing more money is not going to make your situation any better. If you don't have that good relationship with money and finance, it doesn't matter how many zeros you put at the end of it, your relationship is still going to be the same. It's just bigger numbers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So one of my good friends, Jerome Myers, he put a quote on the back of the book, and it wasn't solicited at all. I just kind of said, hey, if you read the book and you find something, tell me. And I put one of the chapters in there talks about that relationship with money specifically. And I quoted the notorious B.I.G. and P. Diddy and Mo Money, Mo Problems. And so Jerome says, his quote was somewhere along the lines of, anytime you talk about macroeconomics and Biggie Smalls in the same sentence, you're connecting dots that most people don't normally connect. And what you said makes a lot of sense, though. It really is. The more money that you bring in, it doesn't necessarily make it worse, but it doesn't necessarily make it better either. It honestly just makes it more complicated. And so you really have to concentrate on doing the things that make you happy the most. And it's too easy in today's world to be distracted by thousands upon thousands, literally thousands upon thousands of things. Some of the research that I did showed that we have over, I can't remember the number now, 12 or 1600 interactions with our mobile devices per day now. That can be distracting. And some of them are important, right? So if your family contacts you, or it could be work related, but for the vast majority of them are distracting. And a lot of them are related to money. So you can easily get distracted by 1,600, 1,500 things per day. In my opinion, and the research that I did suggested that 2 or 3 things. Concentrate on those. It's okay to spend money on luxuries and things that you like and things that make you happy. But just those small things that are specific to you that you've determined make you happy, not what your Instagram feed says, not what your Facebook post says, right? Just figure out the things that mean the most to you and manage your dollars around them, and you'll have a better relationship.
I love that. And I think it's so true. Like when it reminded me of an episode, or no, I think it was a post that I did about this like $20 like lint rolling tool thing that I had bought. And I was like infomercialing in my car as I'm like, this is amazing. You have to come and see this. Like, and my husband was like, just calm down. Like, it's a lint roller. That $20 brought me a lot of joy, I have to say.
Yeah.
Look how disgusting our carpet is. Look at this. Like,
no, right? I know. But you never know, right? I mean, an example in my life from that is, so a buddy of mine, another story from the book, he bought one of those, it's called the Brava oven. It's kind of like an air fryer slash, it's a quick cook oven type of thing. And I love cooking, right? I mean, I can make a mess in anyone's kitchen and have a blast doing it, right? I mean, I don't know how good I am, but I just enjoy it. So I don't need, I have an air fryer, but I don't want to speed up my cooking. I like the experience. So I would never spend a couple $100s on a Brava oven. But my buddy who moved down to Fort Lauderdale bought this Brava oven, and to him, that was an amazing $250, $300 spend or whatever it was. And to him, it's brought amazing amounts of joy. It was completely worth it. And so he told me about it, sends me a link. And then I kid you not, I went to sleep. It was late that night. I woke up the next morning. That oven chased me around the internet for the rest of the day because I had a 30-second conversation with my friend about it. And I clicked on the link. So those ads, those retargeting ads are extremely powerful.
Oh, they are. That's how I got the lint roller.
Yeah, it got you. You somehow expressed. I
stayed on it, and I watched it, and I was like, I don't think that really works. And then it just kept coming and coming and coming. I was like, fine. I'll prove that it doesn't work. It actually works. But anyways, so talk to me a little bit about what made you decide. So you sort of took a huge leap in obviously leaving a job, you and your to kind of start something new. Yeah. So tell me a little bit about what that was like and what that decision was like when you finally said, okay, yeah, it's time to go. Like, let's just try this and see.
There's 2 things I like to point out when we made this transition. So my business partner and I had 27 years combined experience in the financial industry. So we knew that we were going to make this transition from a financial aspect, managing those technical things that most people either don't have the time to or aren't necessarily interested in, kind of like you mentioned it before, like accounting and taxes, insurance and benefits at work, those sort of things that we help families with. We knew that we would be good at that. I'm very, very confident that those skills over these, the designations that we have and the professional education that we have, we knew that would be good. So that was surprisingly easy because we didn't have to transition much. We just kind of had to keep up with what we were doing. The challenging part, though, was being a true entrepreneur. The way we worked in our previous model, we weren't franchisees technically, but it was kind of like we worked in that model. So we had to run a business, but we didn't have to run a business, right? Yeah. We had to worry about the business that we did, but not the overall business of the company. So that was a really tough transition. And we knew it would be tough too. We knew that we were taking a big leap because we were going from advising a lot of families that have businesses to actually being in business ourselves and dealing with those behind the scenes type of things that most people probably don't even think about when you go to the store and shop. You're not thinking about accounts receivable and insurance and benefits for employees and employment taxes. You're not thinking about all those things. So it was really challenging. And that put a mental strain on us, but you know what? It was really motivating as well, because I think when you feel a passion about something and you have a purpose and a desire to do something a little bit different, you're really driven to push through just about anything. And so the reason why we left our former company was not because of the company. In fact, I still work with them. I'm still a client of theirs myself, technically. But what we were being asked to do by some of the families that we serve, and by the way, we call them partners. So if you hear me say the word partners, you can kind of replace it for clients. There's nothing against the word clients. I just think it's a little transactional. We really want to partner with the families we work with because we want to support them in the mission, the things that are most important to them. So the partners that we serve, they were asking us to do things that we just weren't able to do in that previous model. They wanted a deeper level of service, and we were kind of like a mile wide and an inch deep. We were serving a lot of people, but not in a large capacity. So we wanted to kind of switch that up and serve less people, but deeper. And so that really, really motivated us to say, you know what? I don't care how challenging workers' compensation is. We're going to figure it out, and we're going to get that done. We're going to start a business. We're going to get registered by the SEC and the state, and we're going to start a registered investment advisor. And we've done it. And so you asked a question, like, what was that like? It was a whirlwind, but it was the greatest ride, and we're still doing it right now. And I'm very, very candid about our journey on LinkedIn. We do a monthly, we call it the monthly flex. And we talk about, it's kind of a play on words because it's half flexing on what we've done well and half being quite honest on the things that we need to improve on.
And I think I've watched, quite a few of them in my stalking of guests, like I love to do. And I love that because I think it's important, I think, as you go along in business and as you start seeing successes, that people get scared of going, well, I don't want to tell anybody, that it wasn't a smooth road to get here. Whereas I don't know anybody who's had a smooth road getting anywhere,
No,
and I think
yeah.
that, I love the fact that you share those stories and are very honest and open with it, because I think it gives people almost like a little bit of a respite of going, oh, okay, it's not just me.
Yeah, the most successful people in any industry, not just our industry, any industry, they've had their tough times. We don't see the grind that they've had to go through. It's not easy to get there. There's no overnight successes, right? They say your success becomes evident overnight, but it's not manifest overnight. It's something that takes a long time. And that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to be open and honest. I mean, I went through 12 years of going to conferences and seeing people speak, and they get up there on the stage and they tell you all of the great things that they've done. It's hard to learn from someone who says, in my third year, I quadrupled my revenue. Like, that's great, but
Ow.
Why did you not quadruple your revenue in your second year? That's more important to me.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's anything to be ashamed about. And in fact, I think it should be celebrated, the tough times, because I always say this on my podcast: failures are hurdles of success. They absolutely are. You have to have those tough times, or you can't grow. It's impossible.
Yeah. And I love that. It's so true. I have that, same thing that I always say: failure is not a constant thing. You have a choice. Either it becomes a mistake or it becomes a learning experience. You choose which one it is, but you can't ever remain in a failure. So I love that. So talk to me a little bit about what made you decide to write this book, and then what is it about? What can people expect out of it?
Sure. You know how to fire me up. I wrote the book because I knew there was a large group of people that, even in our previous model, were just not getting the message that I believe is really powerful, that money is a positive tool. Money and technology should be used as positive tools in our life. And that's absolutely why I wrote it. The messages in the book are not the description of what our new firm, Initiate Impact, does. It's not our service. It's things that can help you use the technology in our lives, your mobile devices, your cell phones, understand how social media platforms work, and use them and the internet to help you make wise financial decisions. And that's not a message for an isolated group of people, the 15 families that we currently serve at Initiate Impact. That's a message for everyone, because how many billions of people are on the internet every day, every second of the day now? So the message of the book is that social media, ads, and technology are positive forces in our financial lives.
So let's talk about some of actionable steps that people can take to, sort of building these new habits around personal finance.
Great question, because you mentioned habits. I don't know if you've ever heard of the book. It's pretty popular these days. It's the #1 seller on Amazon last year, Atomic Habits by James Clear. Huge fan of that book, and especially his concept of, he talks about the plateau of latent potential. And the story in my life of that is about playing the drums. So it's always been a joke of mine in my life that I have no musical talent, can't sing, couldn't hear a note to save my life, but I always had a little bit of rhythm. And so I decided I'm going to take up playing the drums one day. And I practiced the drums for probably 6 months. And I'm not a quitter. I would not give up. And I never felt that I was ever getting to a point where I could really actually play the drums, right? I mean, I was getting a little bit better at some of the drills that you watch on like YouTube. But little did I know that I hadn't reached my plateau of latent potential yet. But then I kid you not, one day I was playing and all of a sudden it clicked. Something hit and I was able to feel what I had been working on for 6 months, that it was latent. It was I could not notice it. And I screamed, Tanya. I mean, I was like, I got it. And my wife came running upstairs. She thought I broke my neck or something. And I was like, honey, I figured it out. And so I bring that up because you talked about actionable steps. So my first point is, before you even think about actionable steps, because there's plenty of books out there on budgeting and finance and debts, there's plenty of resources. The first thing you got to think about though is that it's going to take time in your financial life. Like, you don't make money overnight. I mean, I guess you could, I just got back from Vegas. You can win money in 30 seconds. It's possible, yes. But for most financial decisions, it takes time. And there's usually a plateau of latent potential with good money habits. So budgeting, for example, a good budget saves more than it spends. But if you're in debt, it's going to take a little bit of time to see those returns. So the first thing to consider is it takes a little bit of time. Commit to it before you do anything. Decide what you're going to do. So some actionable steps are, first of all, you want to create something that makes it easy for you to understand what your money does. So there's multiple apps that you can use to manage your money. Mint.com is probably the most popular. I'll throw that one out there. You can download an application to keep track of your budget. And there's a concept out there, I did not come up with this, called zero-based budgeting. And that's my favorite way to do budgeting. So you download the app and you track where you spend your money. And I would suggest doing that for at least a few months, because things are going to change, things come up. So first actionable step, download the app and keep track of what it is that you're spending money on. And then of course, what your income sources are. If you have a single W-2 type of job, it should be relatively easy to track what's coming in. So you want to be bringing in more than is going out. Simple enough. If you're not doing that and you have debts, there's a chapter in the book that talks about different ways of paying off debt. I say the first thing you need to do is identify what the minimum payments on all your debts are. That would be the first step there. And then what you want to do is be at least paying the minimum payments, and then figure out either the credit card or the type of debt with the least amount and pay that off first. That's called the avalanche method. Or there's the snowball method, where you choose the one with the highest interest rate. I can go into more detail, but those are just a couple suggestions on action steps for people on budgeting and debt.
Yeah. And I think there's so much there. There's so much
There's
there.
a lot.
But I'm like such a
finance,
I'm such a financial person too, that it just makes me happy, like, to dig into, those sort of things. But I think that, I think the most important message, and I love what you said, is that sometimes people will read these things and they'll see like, I got out of debt or debt free in it, 6 months or whatever, but everybody's situation is different and circumstances change. So I think that sometimes people set their targets wrong. Like I always say, if you're in debt, your first target should not be, making all this money and doing all of this investing. Your first target should just be getting out of the hole that you're in, because there's no point in planning a trip if you're stuck in a hole. You got to get out of the hole.
Completely agree. And I would say, even before you get into the technical aspects of how to pay money off, or even downloading the Mint app, just from a philosophical perspective, for me and the families that I've worked with over the years that have had different levels of debt, different levels of income, it's always most important to identify what's most important to you. Like, there are some people out there that have other things that are actually more important than the debt that they have. So for most people, I would say you should have as little debt as possible. But there are some people out there that there's other things that need to be done. So I don't begin to say that any method of saving, investing, debt payments, budgeting, any of those topics, there's no universal solution for anyone. I believe that everyone's situation is unique.
Yeah, that's so true. Okay, tell us what else we can find in the book.
Some great stories, actually. I love to tell stories. My broadcasting kind of style, I think, comes out a little bit. So if you're looking for stories that will help illustrate situations, I think it's a great text for you, because it's not just technicalities. The title is all about money and technology, so it might seem that it's all technical aspects, and they're there. Believe me, those actionable steps are there. But it provides stories to give you a background and understanding how different personal finance topics relate to technology. So we talked about budgeting. There's investing in there. If you're into cryptocurrency and you've heard a little bit about the decentralized finance talk out there, there's a chapter on that to explain how the economy works and how that's a different money system. And I believe that's going to be very important as we move into the future. If you have questions about insurance, there's a chapter on all different kinds of insurance. There's a chapter about retirement benefits. There's a chapter about taxes, estate planning. I'm throwing a lot at you, but every single one of those has technology or apps or ways that you can use the devices of today to help you make those decisions. And I talk about decision fatigue. I think I should stress this too. Those decisions that you make about what's most important to you will help make decisions down the road much, much easier. And I found the biggest reason that people develop money stress is not because of the actual decisions themselves are that hard. It's because of the volume, the amount of decisions that pile up as you get older and your career group moves on and life changes. You have kids, babies, marriages, deaths. Those things pile up, and it's very, very hard to make decisions. So there's a surprise ending in the book, though. And, I don't want to give you a complete spoiler, but we kind of already touched on in the beginning. The idea of the book is to not help you accumulate as much money as possible. That's not what the book is for. If you're looking for a get rich quick, this is how to invest your money overnight, this is not the book for you. But if you're looking for a book to help you make wise decisions, develop a healthy relationship with people around you and your money, then that's what you'll find in the book.
I think that's true about decisions. Now that you say it, I realize that, the older I get, the harder it is for me to make certain decisions, because when I was younger, I first started my business in 98. It was just me. So if it crashed and burned, it was just me that crashed and burned. But now I have a family and other people that I need to worry about, and aging parents and all of that other stuff. So I don't make, such rash decisions. When I look back and I think, I don't know if I would have made that, if I would make that leap, because sometimes I was like, let's go, let's try it, see if it works. What if it fails?
Yeah.
It'll be all right. Now I'm like, I don't have, 10 years. I don't want to be working another 20 years to try to make this up if it all goes wrong.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I think it's, that's an interesting, an interesting way to look at it, and be okay with that. I'm okay with those decisions. So
yeah, you can't pre-plan everything. There's no way to predict the future. I'm a professional advisor in the space, so I have to be very careful about, there's no way I can make guarantees.
Yeah.
But the one guarantee that I can make is that the people who have prepared as much as possible are just less stressed down the road when certain decisions come up. The less challenging decisions you make, the better decisions you make, right? If you have less stress on you, it's a lot easier. And it's proven, there's scientific evidence that the brain, the ego, if you will, not ego as in arrogance, but the ego, that the stress level, the endurance of the mind can only take so many challenging decisions in a short period of time. So if they start coming faster, or something happens in life and unexpected, and you have to pile on a bunch of decisions at once. I tell a story, a kind of sad story about a widow in the book who was overwhelmed with decisions that ended up really not being that challenging, but it was kind of my fault. And here's me, being completely candid. I probably forced way too many decisions on her all at once, because in my mind, they were easy decisions because I had been doing it for a decade, right? I was just, here, let's just bang these out. And ultimately what I should have done is said, all right, we don't need to make this decision right now. Let's make one at a time and spread them out over a year or two as you adjust to life now without your husband. And so it was just proof to me that it's better off that you make decisions slowly. And the only way you can do that or guarantee that is if you do them in advance. If you say, all right, if this happens, then these are my options. and this is what I'll do. So that if it does, then you can say, all right, I've kind of already made that decision.
I think that's an important lesson no matter what you do in your life, because I think, as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency of getting stuck in that. And I know I have been completely guilty of that as well, is that you're so used to what it is that you do and seeing the other side of it that we forget to take that step back and realize your client does not have all that experience. It's not that simplistic to them. What you do is really challenging. And I think that's, important lesson for everybody to take, is to take that step back and go, gee, am I guilty of doing that? Like, am I overwhelming? Because people are scared to go, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. Like,
No,
I just had that conversation with my investment guy. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? I don't even think anything you said was English. Like, but people are scared to do that.
Oh, it is. And that's another, just as a kind of a quick note from an entrepreneurial perspective, one of the biggest things that I learned in my career is that you have to put yourself in the shoes of the people you're working with, because you don't want them to ever feel like they feel ignorant or dumb for asking questions. And I had this similar experience. You may not see it right now, but I actually have a broken clavicle. I'm 4 weeks in, it's healing, but I had a similar experience with my doctor. God bless him. I mean, he was trying to help me make decisions and figure out what we were going to do, and what my treatment course of action was. But not the first meeting. I think the first meeting, he knew I was kind of in shock. I was in so much pain the morning after. I didn't know what it was. But the second meeting, I went in there and he took an x-ray and he starts spitting out all these terms. And I'm like, whoa, slow down there, doc. What the heck does that mean? Right. And it made me think, what, I had similar experience as a professional in my life with people asking me, whoa, slow down, Bob. What did you mean by that term? So you don't want to do that. But when you're talking about life and the financial world and the topics of the book, I just find that most things are not that complicated. I think the stock market, insurance, those things can be very, very intimidating. And that's only because there's just a lot of rules, not because the concepts are really that challenging. I mean, there's some advanced strategies in every industry, but I mean, what most people need to know is not really that challenging. It's just that you have to most people can't dedicate. When Malcolm Gladwell says you need 10,000 hours to be an expert in something, right? I don't have 10,000 hours to dedicate to surgery, like my doctor.
Learning about your clavicle, yeah.
Yeah, like I remember from school, he's like, hey, you broke your collarbone. And I was like, that's a clavicle, right, doc? And he smiled. He's like, you got it. And I was like, all right. So I remembered something from when I was a kid. But yeah, I don't have the time to be an orthopedic surgeon. Although the basic stuff, I'm sure I would be able to figure out if I spent some time on it.
But I think that's an important thing, because like you said, it's not that you're, going to be an expert in that field, but it is important for you to understand, to take a little bit of time to understand the basis of what's going on so that you can make the right decision, when you're working with somebody else, not just to go into a blind and go, I hope this works.
Absolutely. Whether you're meeting with a financial professional. By the way, there is a chapter in the book that talks about how to choose the right one for you. That might be valuable for people too, towards the end of the book. Or you're going to an orthopedic surgeon because you broke a bone for the first time in your life. But what you said is important. Everyone has access to information these days, almost too much. WebMD, honestly, is not very good for me, because I think when I have like the sniffles, I need to go to the hospital. But there's plenty of information out there. So the book is a good example. You can educate yourself. I'm not saying that you shouldn't work with a professional. I always recommend that, especially when it comes to legal things and estate planning and taxes, and definitely work with a professional if depending on the severity or the complexity of your situation. But a book like Personal Finance in a Public World, or many other ones out there, can help you get a baseline and understanding. Just like when I went home from my first appointment with a doctor and he said I broke my clavicle, I looked up, what are the treatments? How should I wear the sling? How long do I need to be in it? What are foods that I can eat that can help heal, to give me vitamin D and calcium? Like, you can get information pretty easily these days.
And I think it's an important thing to do, but sometimes you get thrust into those situations, and that's how you learn. And it's funny that you say that, because I think it was maybe a year or 2 years ago now, my husband broke his distal bicep tendon. It snapped. I'd never heard of that before, ever. He was picking up a pallet of chicken. And it just popped.
Mm.
Like, I know everything that's in that arm now, but it was just that. It was like, I need to do, we need to do research on this. I need to know, what this
Yeah.
is about. But until that situation popped up, it never would have occurred to me to go, I wonder what would happen if you ever like broke a tendon,
Yeah, like, what
but
would you
so,
do?
yeah. And so I took that, sort of inward and went, when something makes me curious, that's just my nature to go, I want to learn a little bit more about this. And sometimes they're great. They help me in my business. They help me with my clients. They help me when I'm doing interviews. And other times I learn stuff that's pointless and I may never use again.
I feel like I go down some rabbit holes, kind of like you mentioned
I
earlier.
do. I have jumped
Yeah.
down some like weird thing. I learned way more about dust and what it is than probably what I would need to. But hey, sometimes those rabbit holes are fun. And one day I'm hoping that it'll come in handy. I know one day someone will say something and I'll be like, let me tell you about that.
Let me tell you about those dust mites.
Yeah. Let me tell you what's actually in that. So we've talked about the book and you've given us, I think, some great action steps to even start with. And I know there's a bunch more and I don't want to give a ton of them away because of course we want people to go, and buy the book, but you have a special deal that is out for your book right now. So talk to us a little bit about that because the people might be really interested in this.
Yes, absolutely. So right now, I don't claim to be an expert in book marketing, but my publisher knows what they're doing. So right now we have a 99-cent deal. Anyone can get it. You can check it out. Just search Personal Finance in a Public World on Amazon, or you can head over to my website, bobdepasquale.com. Catch the link right there. 99 cents for the ebook version. You can pick it up and have it in your hands in less than a minute. And I would just be more than happy for people to check it out and just learn a little bit about it. And I am available too. I would love for people to connect with me if they have questions about some of the topics of the book. I'm trying to create a community around it because I want the topics of the book to be available to as many people as possible. So I'm hoping a combination of social media communication through Twitter and Instagram, those are my big platforms, or through purchasing the ebook for just 99 cents, you can get the information there. So check it out.
And we're going to make sure that we have all of those links. But now is a time for shameless plugging because that's, part of why we're all in business together. So talk to us a little bit about your company and what it is that you do in case someone's like, what does this guy do? I like this guy. I like the cut of his jib.
Absolutely. I hope you like the cut of my jib. So the organization that my business partner and I founded is called Initiate Impact. You can go to the website. It's initiateimpact.com. We provide modern financial management for purpose-driven families. So some of the topics in the book are very, very important to us, but we focus on families that either run a business or have some kind of influence in a business or an organization, and that the bottom line is not the only thing that's important to them. They have a cause or a purpose or some kind of influence that their family works on beyond that. So we work not only with their financials, but also helping them develop that purpose and mission out so they can achieve that and feel like whatever resources they have, whether it's money, whether it's time, whether it's skills, that they use it for positive impact in the world. So that's initiateimpact.com. We do consultations with people 3 days a week. So you can get a schedule on there and jump on. We'd just love to talk to you. No obligations. And if it's a good fit, we'd love for you to be our partner.
Perfect. Okay. So just before we go, I'm going to put you on the spot because
Okay.
that's just fun for me to do. So if you could give one piece of advice, either that was given to you or that you just came up with, for all of the people that are listening today, our Foxy listeners, what would that be?
My piece of advice would be to write down what's most important to you at least twice a year on a piece of paper. And the reason why I say that is because I don't think people struggle identifying what they want in life or what their desire is. They struggle with change. And so with all the families that I've worked with over the years, they have a trouble with a transition. And the biggest question that I learned to ask people was not how much money do you need? When do you want to retire? How much taxes do you want to pay? It was what's most important to you right now in your life. So I tell them to write it down so that they don't forget it. So at least twice a year, wake up, I don't know, get with your loved one, spouse, partner, whoever it is, and say, let's spend 15 minutes and see if we're on track for what we want most in life.
And we're just at the beginning of 2022. So there's no better time than right after you listen to this episode to sit down and do just that. That was perfect.
Absolutely. First week of the year.
Thank you so much, Bob, for coming on and being half awake. I appreciate you coming on and sharing with us. And we'll make sure we have all of the links where people can, follow you. And I love what you're putting out on LinkedIn. I've really been enjoying that. And I'm really looking forward to continuing reading your book myself.
Awesome. This is a great show. I love these type of conversations. I hope there's some people out there who feel like they can use technology for good in their life. So thank you for having me, and have a great 22.
Thank you so much to Bob for coming on the show, for sharing so many nuggets of great information and tips and tricks that you can use to walk away with today to start changing your relationship with money and with decision making. And, it is such an important relationship that you have, one of the most important ones in your life. So one of the things that, I thought was really important that what he said and what I wanted to reiterate is know that it's going to take time. You're going to have to be patient, but you need to commit to it, whether that is creating new good habits around your money or whether that's breaking old habits. And there are going to be moments where you feel like you're in a slump, but just push through. One of the things that I find the most useful is an accountability partner. And I have a few different ones that I, use, whether it's friends or family, depending on the situation, my spouse even. But I always make sure that I'm picking somebody who I know is going to understand what I'm going through, but is also going to not let me get away with the excuses and is going to push me to be better, to do better, and to stay on my path to hit my goals. So that might be one thing that you can add to your list of things that you want to find to help you just push yourself that extra mile. So no matter what you're doing today, whether you're looking for an accountability partner, whether you're being one, whether you're starting a habit or changing a habit, make sure you find time to have fun. Because as I always say, if you're not having fun, why are you doing it? Awesome. Thank you so much.
You got it.
All right.
That was fun. One of my favorite things about podcasting and having these conversations is connecting with other people like yourself who have a network and learning more about what you do. So, I'm sure I'll look forward to seeing that and kind of connecting and checking out some of your other episodes.
Yeah, it's been really surprising and interesting, like of the listeners that we get all around the world and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So it's been interesting. Like we get emails from people in like Singapore and stuff that listen to us, and like,
wow, that's cool.
Things I never would have thought of. So yeah, so it does go around. It is. It's been like, if anybody would have told me when I first started this, that some of the people that I would have interviewed or would have been able to meet, I don't think I would have believed it. But now it's just interesting to see, who else is going to cross my path.
Well, it's funny you say about downloading in other countries. So the first day that my book published and the ebook went on sale, I had someone from Germany buy the book. I was like, oh, someone from Germany. All right, cool. Like you just never know. It's amazing how messages get spread out there. So that's great.